Hi, this is Marlene, astrologer extraordinaire, and I'm going to talk a little bit about when I first started studying astrology 35 years ago. I had a reading that was so impactful. I walked out of there and I said, that's it. I have to study astrology now. I'd had a reading prior to that in the mid to late 80s. And it really was good. It was handwritten out. It was 18 pages, but it was nothing like the one that I had in 1990 by Daniel Giamario. That's my astrologer. He's been an astrologer for 55 years. I've been an astrologer for 35. It was that day after I had a reading with Daniel. I believe he spent a lot more time than he might have spent initially in it with somebody else. I think it had to do with the tribal situation, in that when I say tribal, what I mean is that we're both the same moon sign, which is not actually an easy moon sign to be born under. This was 1990, and it was 2 hours and 15 minutes. I was just every step of the way, I was astounded at the amount of information and how he came out with me with all of that information and the quality of information that I was getting and the details of my chart. I was a hypnotherapist at the time. I did past life regression. I was on the island of Maui, which I will say, is a very spiritual place. So it was quite readily more acceptable, fortunately for me, on the island of Maui at that time. So one of the books that I got, and it wasn't recommended to me or anything. I don't know how I came about coming upon this book or how I chose it. This is the book here, The Astrologer's Handbook, and it's by Francis Secoyan and Louis Acker. I don't know if that's showing up. It's going to be reverse on the camera or what. Francis Secoyan and Louis Acker. Let me just look at when it was published. I bought this in 1990. 1973 is when this book was printed. I have to say, what I really liked about it is that it goes into not only all the sun signs, but it will go into like sun sign, okay, so let's say your sun sign is in the 7th house. So it'll go in there, it'll give the sun sign in each of those houses. Then it'll go, well, what does it mean if your moon is in the 1st house? If your moon is in the 2nd house, 3rd, 4th, 5th, all the way around to the 12th house. Then it'll go through Mercury, through each and every house. Venus, through each and every house, from house 1 to 12. Then it will also, not only that, okay, what does it mean if you were born with Venus in Capricorn? What does it mean if you were born with Venus in Aquarius, Venus in Pisces, Venus in Aries, and all the way through Mars, Jupiter, Uranus, Saturn, Neptune, Pluto. Then it goes through the trines. Let's say you were born with Sun trine Mars, Sun trine Moon. It'll tell you exactly what that means. Then it goes through all of the squares. So what if you're born with a Sun square Mars? What does that mean? Sun square Saturn, what does that mean? I'll tell you right now, you would have definitely had some very strict parents if you had a Sun square Saturn. Mother or father. Typically that's the father, but it can play out as a parental role. Just thought I'd add that little piece of information in there. Then again, the oppositions as well. It doesn't go through so much through a sesquiquad or a quincunx, which is a 150-degree angle. I found it to be extremely useful. Here's the book again. I think it's definitely one of the best books that you can get out there if you're somebody who wants to study astrology and you want to know precisely what it means to have, Venus in the 1st house in Aquarius, and or, all the way around the dial. And of course, you're going to have your exact birth minute to know what that is. Not a guessing game. I've mentioned this on a few other videos that I've done. Your mother does not always know the exact birth time, especially if she had, numerous children. It's not always that reliable in my experience. You want to look at the birth certificate because I just have to tell you, more often than not, it happens all the time. Somebody calls me, they want me to do a reading. Do you have the birth certificate? Well, I think it was about 2:40 in the afternoon. It may or may not. I've had many times and they find the birth certificate and it's 2:40 a.m. rather than p.m. Or it's nowhere near the time that they thought it was. 4 minutes of time can be 1 degree astrology. I'll give you an example. I did a reading for a lady. She's an older woman. She's in her early 80s now, but her entire life she thought she was a Virgo. And when I saw the date she was born on September 23rd, I said, you might be a Libra. No, I'm a Virgo. I said, well, interestingly enough, because the proximity of Sun, Mercury, Venus, and in their rotation, they're very close to each other. I said, you may actually have some planets in Virgo, and you may have some planets in Libra, but we can't know until we have your exact birth time. So she was able to get a copy of her birth certificate, and I ran it, and guess what? She was 17 minutes into Libra. Now, it did turn out that she had Venus in Virgo. She was a double Libra with Venus in Virgo, so she still would have had some of those Virgoan qualities as well. So I just thought I would mention the importance of getting the exact time. Another lady, she thought her entire life she was a Capricorn. And I said, what day were you born? She said December 21. And I said, it changes on that day. And a lot of times, I have the gut when I'm saying that. And I said, where were you born? She said Switzerland. And she was able to get her birth certificate. Again, turned out she was Sagittarius sun. So she was well into her 70s. So again, her entire life, she thought she was a Capricorn. She's not. She's a Sagittarius. So just to give you a few examples of how that works out, and it makes all the difference, because then it's going to reposition all of the planets in your chart, going to move them over another position, 2, 3, or 4, depending on, again, how off your birth time is, and or a lot of people that sometimes say, well, they say use 12 p.m. if you don't know what your birth time is. Again, none of the signage positions as far as where your Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Sun, Moon fall in your chart are going to be accurate if you're going to use that. And I'm going to be adding a lot more content, because when it comes to astrology, I've put about 60,000 hours into mind sciences, because I was a hypnotherapist prior to that. So, and my education is forever ongoing. So I could talk about astrology for hours, days, months. So, alrighty, thank you for tuning in. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.